Thank you for joining today. My name is Reed Deshler, and it's my privilege to spend a bit of time with you. We did this broadcast about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and we had a great response. Unfortunately, the broadcast didn't record the way we wanted, so we thought, let's just redo it, and we'll get another live audience together, and we will record it this time so that it can be watched and viewed by teams and groups afterwards. And as we get started today, the last time we met, we did it in February. We talked about real change leaders, where we talked about some of the characteristics that executives have during times of transformational change. We got into an assessment around how leaders can emphasize and strengthen their ability to affect change. And we had a really dynamic presentation, and feel like today's discussion is going to be equally engaging, because we're really going to dive into the question of growth and how an organization can take its limited resources and position those for greatest marketplace success. Just by way of background, for those unfamiliar, AlignOrg Solutions is a small consultancy that specializes in helping organizations clarify how they want to win in the marketplace, how their organization is set up to deliver on their strategy, and then ultimately how you design and implement the changes that will make your organization truly different and successful. A lot of what we do is projects where we are engaged by clients to go in with our distinctive tools and methods and help them contemplate new ways to drive efficiencies or set up organizations to capture new business opportunities. And in addition to that, we do some capability building. And we do that because we really think that if organizations are able to build their muscles around organization transformation skills like organization design, organization diagnostics, change management, that they'll be in a much better place and position to be able to affect change and improvement in their organization. Now, through today's webinar, I like to use stories. Some of the stories come from organizations that we've worked with. Some come from organizations that we all read about or hear about in the press. And we just find that stories are a great way to learn and to get examples, I guess, or cases of how organizations are applying different principles and practices. So with that, we'll dive into today's content. As Vani indicated in the kickoff, I welcome questions. Questions are a great way to target the discussion that we have today. I've got some set materials that I'm prepared to go through, but if there are specific questions, we can definitely take a minute and try to answer those and try to make it as a meaningful learning opportunity as possible. So today's agenda, there's sort of three areas that I want to delve into that I believe are keys to designing an organization for effectiveness and efficiency. The first is really to get into this question of growth. What is it that creates opportunities for growth? And in a sense, I'm already giving away my hand here by suggesting it has something to do with differentiation and alignment. The next key that I want to spend a few minutes on is how do we then overcome a significant growth challenge that an organization confronts. You can see the little tagline here, a play to American football, which is we're good at running the ball, but we're not so good at passing it. And that's really at the core of what makes it difficult for organizations to accomplish their growth objectives, should they solve the secret of growth that we'll talk about first. And then lastly, we'll talk just a little bit about what we call the road less traveled, and when we can learn from other organizations and when we need to really sort of chart a path that is unique and bespoke to our own organization. So that's kind of the agenda we're going to go through here. So let's get started kind of in the first topic, the secret to growth. And as I've indicated, this really has to do with differentiation and alignment. To kind of get an image in front of us that we can talk to, I've got a chart here, and I often see the world as if it's a three-dimensional place, at least, where it is defined from a marketplace perspective by three key dimensions. One of them is, what is the product or service that you are offering? And this is what provides customers or stakeholders choices and variety. The next question is, who are your customer or segments that you're going after? And what options are you considering as it pertains to how to target those customers, and what unmet needs do customers have that you're going to be uniquely positioned to help address? And then lastly is the channel options, which deals with how are those customers or those segments of customers going to access your products and services so that they can fulfill their unmet needs. And naturally, all of these three dimensions have numerous options. If you think of any industry, there are countless ways that products and services are generated, and different ways that they're provided to customers, and they're provided to different types of customers in different ways. If you think of something like a financial services organization, and you take something as simple as retail banking, well, that's a choice or an option that someone could purchase. Who is retail banking geared for? Well, generally it's geared toward consumers versus, commercial entities or businesses, or I don't know, people looking for loans, things like that. So there's just a variety of different customer segments you might go after. You've got retail banking. How do you get that? Well, in the old days, we'd go to branch locations. Now we do a lot of it through mobile banking. So the channel options vary, and there are even now some competitors out there that have said, we don't even have branches. We don't need those. We just do everything online. So if someone wants to do business with us, we're the 100% online bank. And some of those options are incredibly successful because it meets an unmet need that a customer has. It delivers a product or service that they need, and it does it in a way that's convenient, and it allows the customer to do their banking transactions, for example, however, whenever they want to do them. And so this notion of putting these three dimensions together is how organizations really achieve an understanding of their marketplace and how they want to win in the marketplace. Now, that's the interesting part of the conversation. And now when we start to think about how to establish growth, if you're a brand new startup, you simply define kind of what your product or service is going to be, what problem that's going to solve for a customer, and how you're going to get it to them. And I don't want to say that's simple, but in some respects, you're not constrained by what you already do or what you already have. Organizations that are already up and running still have to go through that process, but they have to deal with the legacy of what they already have. And so there's this simple pattern for growth that we've found to be proven over and over again for how organizations can win at their respective endeavors. The first is to choose a position, okay? So you could argue, well, that's just simply a matter of identifying the intersection of what product or service do we want to offer to which customer segment, and how do we want to optimally get that product or service to that customer. I don't want to say that's simple, but that's sort of step one. Certainly large, complex organizations are going to have multiple positions. And so if you're listening in today and you work in an organization where you're going after multiple markets or trying to meet different customer needs, then you'll have different segments or positions that you have chosen to go after. Once you have identified your position, then you're confronted with a question as to how are you going to be different in that position, because conceivably in that place that you've chosen to be, there are competitors. You're not the only one who chose to offer the same product or service to that same customer or customer segment, through the same channel. And so you are immediately confronted with the competitive question of how then are you going to differentiate from any other option that's in the space that you've chosen. And often, in order to determine that, you have to make some decisions about what it is you're going to be world-class at. What are you going to really set yourself apart by? It can't just be a proclamation or an advertisement that says, hey, we're the best at such and such. You actually have to deliver on those promises. And that demands that an organization has some unique capabilities or activities. If you think about some of the most quoted or referred to organizations out there, organizations like Starbucks or Apple or Amazon or Southwest Airlines or whatever the organization might be, those organizations have done a nice job carving out their respective positioning or positions if they have multiple, and they have designed a unique set of activities that really sets them apart and generally commands great marketplace attention. They achieve above their competitors in the marketplace. But here's where it gets interesting, because this is usually where organizations start to really trip up if they haven't made it through, if they've made it through the first three steps. Is the last step is all about then, once you understand where you're going to play, how you're going to be different, and what muscles or activities your organization needs to have to really win and compete, now you have to understand how are the rest of the organization choices that we have to make going to be set up to deliver value. Now, many of you may already be familiar with our book, Mastering the Cube. Mastering the Cube is based on a simple analogy that says that organizations are kind of like a Rubik's Cube. Each side of a Rubik's Cube has a distinct color, and in an organization there are some key dimensions, as are illustrated here on this page, such as how the organization does its work, or how the organization is structured, or how the organization shares, trades information, and tracks and measures its performance. Its people and rewards, its continuous improvement processes and practices, and finally, its leadership practices and culture. All of those dimensions together represent the organizational cube. And if you want to win in the marketplace and truly achieve outlier growth, you're going to not only choose a winning position, find a way to differentiate, understand the capabilities that are going to set you apart and give you an advantage, but then you line up all the rest of the things in your organization as best you can to achieve that particular marketplace success. When you look inside of organizations who are great and who command sort of the outlier attention that the marketplace provides, that they generate above average revenues and profits, they often do it because when you go down inside of their organization, they don't look like everyone else. They don't do things exactly the way everyone else does it. They have different systems. They treat information differently. They place their talent in unique ways. One of the things that's always stood out to me for Southwest Airlines is an understanding that they staff differently at their airport locations, because one of the critical areas of operations is how quickly they turn around their airplanes. So you think of Southwest Airlines as a low-cost discount air carrier, but they have heavier than normal staffing sometimes at their gate locations so that those planes can turn around quickly, because they realize they generate revenue not when a plane is sitting at a gate, but when it's flying. And so you'd say, well, that's sort of a simple, obvious little thing, but the reason they know that is because they went down from their marketplace positioning all the way into the organization choices and determined, how are we going to do this work of turning an airplane around? How shall we structure it? What roles do we need? How are we going to measure and count whether or not we're being successful and prompt in our plane turnarounds? Do we have people who are cross-trained and can step in and fill multiple roles, and are they rewarded to move the plane quickly? And so on and so forth. And those are the kinds of things that really set organizations apart from a growth